everyone, to a special episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. I know we're just getting into the hang of these quick takes. When something happens and everybody wants to know about it, we're getting a little bit better at just jumping on the horn and putting something out there.
Yeah. This is big news, right? One of the pays, right? The Paycom, Paycor, Paylocity, all the pays, Paychex. We've got two that have gotten together, and this has been obviously huge news. I was already being pinged by clients and others in the marketplace on Sunday before this happened. I've got briefings all week with clients wanting to ask questions, and certainly we've had a lot of folks on the social media asking about it. And so here we are. I'm going to give you all the inside baseball that I can.
Yeah, and like, why the interest? I think you said it great in your blog, in your blog post, which is this marriage might not have been one that people are expecting, right?
Yeah. It wasn't one that I would have picked for. It's not the two I would have picked to get together, but I think it does make sense. And once we go through this, I think you'll understand why. Some of it I think is obvious. Some of it may not be all that apparent, but just thought we'll share what we can and give you our point of view. And I know you've got some experience with vendors getting bought. What should buyers be thinking about? I know there's a lot of benefits implications here. So I would love to just sort of share all that for those folks.
Yeah, well, let's give it a roll and see, with so little time out there on the news, what we can share.
Yeah. So, all right, let's start with maybe talking this deal by the numbers. So what's happened? Paychex has purchased and acquired or agreed to acquire its SMB competitor, Paycor. So congratulations to both. I think this is an interesting deal. It's an all cash transaction for $22.50 a share, which represents a value of $4.1 billion. So if you know Paycor, they just went public in 2021. And for Paychex, largest deal in their history. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, and by the way, that's about almost a 20% premium over the recent trading price, right? So at a decent premium.
Yeah, not bad, right? And I think Paycor obviously has done a really good job. Their brand, right? They're on the Bengals Stadium, Paycor. I think it's Paycor Field, Paycor Stadium. I'm not sure. So they've really done a lot in terms of marketing and really their product and push really far up market. So it makes a lot of sense.
Fair to say, I would typically say target market of 50 to 500, right? Which is a little bit higher, larger numbers than maybe Paychex.
Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe just to start with some comparison to the organizations, right? Again, by the numbers, if you will. So Paychex, the size of them, obviously about a $5+ billion organization, whereas Paycor is more of a $700 million. I think is their ARR, their total revs annually. Or at least for 2024. And now both of these firms finished their year in the mid-year. I think it's like a May-June kind of a time frame. But back to Paychex. So about 750,000 customers, I think 10 million total employees on their systems and services, with about 2.3 million of those doing or taking an ASO, PEO, or a benefit solution, maybe 401k as well. And then Paycor on the other side, about 2.7 million employees on their platform. Now they have about 49,000 customers and about 31,000 parent companies. So you can imagine there's a lot of chains and franchises and that sort of thing that roll up. But just comparatively, right? I mean, these are totally different organizations in maturity, in targeting, in size, in revenue, that sort of thing. And I think coming together, really fundamentally, Paychex takes out a very formidable competitor that was probably taking some of their customers as they are maturing off of the Paychex solutions. And I think that's part of what gives them the opportunity now to maybe preserve some of that.
Yeah, and actually that's something that many PEO firms, right, are looking at is what's happening as my clients are growing or outgrowing, something that is maybe perfectly suited as they're smaller and then gets bigger.
Yeah, a lot of them will call it a success penalty, right? It's like, we started off with them when they were babies. They were born, 4 or 5 employees, became 50, became 100, became 1,000. And now we just can't really mature with them. I think that's why we saw, or I know that's why we saw, or one of the reasons, one of the drivers behind TriNet and, Insperity and Workday. So
Insperity and Workday. And actually, you weren't wrong. TriNet and Zenefits as well.
There you go. Yeah.
Another example.
So why does this make sense? Well, first of all, I think this is a very affordable, even though it's the biggest in Paychex history. I think it's actually a very affordable number when you think about what they're getting. And so I think it's a good deal. Obviously, it doubles their, more than, I wouldn't say doubles their book of business, but doubles the heads that they have now serviced, right? Because Paycor, like most of the pays, every customer has some level of service. Typically, it's at least compliance and payroll. And if they take others, that's different, right? So you're now at about a 5 million, right, employees that you're serving. Not to mention the folks that you already had that maybe have an opportunity to upsell. I think it also adds more tech. Now, I would argue that the Paycor solution is a bit more mature, certainly a bit more mature and formidable at handling that middle market customer than maybe the Paychex Flex is. Although nothing wrong with Paychex Flex, it punches well above its weight for the market that it's serving. But I think that they're obviously Paychex struggled to maintain those customers, right? You look at something like Paychex retention rate; it's in the 80%. Where you look at someone like Paycor, they've got more of a 90+ retention rate. I think they've almost got a 95 or 8 revenue retention rate. So they're hanging on to their customers, and I think that's because they're able to stay mature with them, or stay with them as they mature.
Just tell me if you're leaving the technology side, because I had a question I
Yeah.
wanted to probe on.
I'm going to get into what it brings. Yeah. But for
Okay,
now,
okay.
I'm just talking kind of why it makes sense. And then last, as we've sort of talked about and wrapped around, it enables them to push further up market, right? I mean, Paychex just hasn't made that push, made that leap, where Paycor has been pulled that way. And I think some of that is the way that they've brought their tech together. We can talk about that. There is a lot that is been acquired. There's some that is integrated. So it's not entirely organic, but it is a bit more mature and it is purpose built and has been brought in and platformed into a pretty robust solution that's obviously resonating with the middle market. So
Let me add also, just I was taking a look at the dimension of industry, like top industries
mm,
and that sort of thing. And of course, down market in the small, medium business space, you serve everybody. There's a lot of
yeah,
everything. They have a lot of overlapping, kind of our top industries that we serve in IT and computer software and healthcare. You would expect that retail, right?
yeah,
Those are complex distributed businesses. But Paycheck has a pretty decent inroads into some of the financial services space,
yep,
whereas Paycor actually has a pretty good track record getting into nonprofits and education, and so
yeah.
there's probably some complementary strengths there from an industry perspective.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, well, so maybe let's talk through what it actually brings to Paychex, and so that actually is on this list. To tell you the truth, let me maybe break some of this down. So first, I think the key thing, and shout out to TD Cohen. I was looking at what they put out in their research, and they see this as an additional total addressable market increase for Paychex of about 10 billion, while taking out a key competitor, right? That is obviously successful further up market from where they are. It's bringing a bit more robust tech. I think I talked about that, including the ability for them who, when I talked to Paycor at HR Tech, they were already talking about pushing a bit more into Mexico and Canada. Makes total sense, right, with the US and where footprints are going, particularly manufacturing and different things, which I think makes a lot of sense. You can kind of see them inching their way towards more of a multi-country core HR. And certainly supporting payroll with partners, right? Safeguard and a couple of other firms were helping them out from a marketplace perspective. They're also, I would argue, first to market with embedded HCM, and they're doing very, very well with that, right? I mean, we've seen solutions like Check and others do really well in the embedded space. Payments and other ancillary capabilities are becoming more embedded. Why not HR, right? Putting HR into systems that should have HR but don't. And the beauty of that is they are doing very well with that embedded solution. They're getting incredibly strong margins, I think in the 40 to 50% range. And think about it, right? It's an indirect channel that is selling itself, right? There's not a lot of lift and effort
Yeah.
in having to go and chase those customers. So that's a key thing there.
As long as folks don't get too into looking for all the bells and whistles, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
secret around embedded HR. You want something, you got the basics, it's easy to extend it, but don't go nuts on wanting the latest and greatest of everything. Then you start talking about something fancier.
it's early, right? I mean, and that's more. I would say that is a down market, probably a little bit more of a down market play right now, but it will mature. And I think what you're seeing is that the embedded capabilities are really back to sectors, right? They're dripping in or dropping into these sector specific solutions that are very well adopted within their communities, but they don't have that HR payroll time kind of core, the day to day that a manager or a leader is going to be dealing with, right? You think about something like like an engineering firm who might be managing big projects, right? What's a major part of a project? Labor. And so having your time systems or having your core HR right there next to your, your engineering business systems is just going to be beautiful. But that's an area where I think Paycor got ahead of its peers. I think there's a huge benefit for Paychex because again, they've got all those services. They can come at that and now start talking to those folks about maybe some PEO, maybe some ASO. I'm sure there's some involved when you do embedded. But yeah, very very interesting channel that Paycor is already done well with and scaling, in
Now, are
that way.
you lumping, kind of the driving into AI driven technology along with embedded, or is that another?
Well, I think it would come along with whatever modules are available. And right now, I believe it's core HR and payroll, if I'm not mistaken. Eventually, I'm sure they'll bring more of the modules embedded, but that right now, I think it's starting in the core space. Most of them started in payroll.
That's definitely, something that Paycor brings to the table for Paychecks.
Yes, yes, tech. I think tech is the big thing here. Now, let's talk about the tech though, because look, Paycor, while it's done really well, while it has a lot of robust point solutions collectively in its platform, a lot of the outside of the core element of the system, the core HR, the payroll, it's really largely been acquisitions. So last year, 2023, well, technically 23, a year plus now, Talenia came on board. That's their AI enabled recruiting. They had already added Newton software years ago, 2015, 16 for applicant tracking. In 23, they also grabbed microlearning, which was Verb. They picked up 7Geese in 2020 for performance management, and of course Zimble in 2019 for their advanced time and scheduling. So a lot of acceleration of their innovation by acquisition. So what worries me about this is, look, anytime these organizations have these multiple systems, right? Paychex has primarily Flex. They also still support Sure Payroll, I guess it would be. Um, that's a lot to maintain, right? I'm curious to what, and I'm waiting still. We haven't had an analyst briefing yet. I'm hoping to get that soon, but I'm curious what they're going to do with this technology. To my understanding, what the press release is saying, what we're hearing is that they are going to operate at least at first as separate brands, obviously targeting slightly different customers in some ways. But I'm sure the synergies will start to get obviously integrated and played out. But we'll see how that goes. The tech is a big question for me, and I think that there is a lot of opportunity likely for them to maybe at some point merge these solutions and maybe have a piece of technology that could play up and down market, or maybe just keep them separate. For now, I think they will. Smaller firms, probably the 100 and below, will stick with the Flex, and then you can imagine the more mature 100 and above, maybe even into the 500s, will probably be more of a Paycor.
Yeah, and depending on the rate at which folks are growing and maturing, it's been at quite a good clip recently. From a growth perspective, there might be some secret sauce opportunities in how do you port or move. When you hit whatever that size is. That I think a lot of these, growth stories are maybe haven't really explored a whole lot. They get two things. Do they
Yeah,
bring them into one? Is there a progression or a path, or how does that happen if you're one of those growth stories? And can they
yeah.
be something unique and really powerful in the market around that?
Yeah, agreed, agreed. So, I would love to talk about maybe some of Paycor's differentiators that I see it, but what are your initial thoughts? So, you've got buyers that are obviously going to go, "Hey, I'm a Paycor customer. I just got bought. What does this mean for my solution?" What is kind of some of the best practices you might tell a customer or buyer that is out there operating on something that's been acquired with this sort of magnitude of organization taking it over?
Yeah, well, let's start with the idea that, this stuff takes time. I mean, if
Yeah,
we didn't see that already with the Ultimate and Chronos, that was a big, big to do in the market. The technology underpinnings are not something that happen overnight. They probably are right at the page of even figuring out strategically as they're organizing the deal.
yeah,
Do both exist? I mean, it takes years. So if you're one of those companies that is, has been bought and you're wondering, oh my, what might happen to me? Nothing's going to change, in the immediate from a foundational offering perspective. And I wouldn't expect a lot of these technology changes or the harmonization of the whole portfolio behind the scenes to be ready for a couple of years realistically.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even know if some of the AI acquisitions that Paycor has made to get that to get that advance or jump, if they've been fully baked in and
Yeah.
incorporated into their products. So
Yeah.
it's not instant. These things happen and they're big logo changes, but when it comes to the technology underpinnings, you know, likewise, a Paychex that might be on that growth trajectory, there's not going to be a clear and obvious answer about
Yeah.
when and where and how to jump. And should, do you jump or do you extend your current platform? And so those are slow moving and strategic questions that will get answered. And so, just don't panic.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
panic.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think you have to understand, imagine I would expect Paycor is going to obviously be in touch. They're probably heads down talking to customers today, really talking about this and maybe helping them. So just, you're right. Be patient, think through, where you are, where you want to be, and then maybe have that
Yeah.
conversation with your vendor. But Julie, sorry, go ahead. I want to
I
talk
was
to you
just
about
going
some
to
other
say,
part.
I do think, folks that are shopping in the market, I mean, there's this market of players down market, right? But I'm not sure that folks that are generally talking to or about the pays might always have paychecks, on the radar and vice versa. And so
Yeah.
I do think, keeping the two brands separate and distinct is probably not a bad idea because
Yeah.
folks that might be interested in a Paycor, if all they see is paychecks, might go, well, that's clearly not what we're looking for based on,
Yeah.
what the differences have been in the past. And so at some point in time, they'll work through and sort that out. And honestly, this is all down market. So whether it's 1 to 50 or 50 to 500, you're still pretty squarely in that
Yeah.
SMB space. But just strategically, when you're thinking about an RFP or searching for which people are in the pot, those individual names do align to something that is a recognizable difference today across those two companies. So
Yeah, yeah, no, excellent point. Excellent point. One of the things I would say here, though, obviously a huge benefit, some of the huge benefits I think to Paychex, but more importantly, a benefit I think to the Paycor client community, right? And this is again, I think it's a win-win for both sides. Is Paychex is coming to the table with a very, and I've written a lot about this, a very impressive one-stop shop for small businesses. You can fundamentally do just about everything you need in their walls by way of their capabilities or a partner. You can get business loans, you can get insurance, you can get lawyer help, legal help. You can get it all, right? You really can. And I think but here's what I think is really, really powerful. Don't forget that, and I love the Paychex always reminded me of this every year when we do their profile. They're the 22nd largest insurance agency in the United States of America, right? That's a big deal. 2.2, I think it is, or 3 billion in health premiums that they're moving and managing, about $1 million in 401k or is it a million per 401k participants? I think actually the dollars there, but a large swath of payroll of 401k participants, huge benefits population, and again, lots of add-on products and deeper services. PEO, obviously, which is something
yeah.
that I don't think Paycor ever offered. Fundamentally, ASO, and look, just a lot you can open the book up to and now sell to a much bigger, more mature, growing customer that I think is really the key hidden gem for Paychex, and also maybe the hidden gem and opportunity for the customers in the Paycor ecosystem.
Yeah, and it actually kind of links to the fact that down market, when you just think about the technology or the managed services activities, they share a lot of the same competitors, right? The ADPs
Yeah.
and the Gustos and the Ripplings and the Paycoms. But when you start to think about what some of the differentiators, the paycheck side of the house is going to have a lot more competition with JustWorks and TriNet and the different PEOs,
Yes.
precisely
Yes.
because they have those extended offerings that nobody's really going to
Yeah.
do if you're more squarely in that technology software with managed services if you want them, and especially the directly related managed services and some embedded HR, right? I mean, they're just serving different purposes,
Yeah.
and so that plays out all the way into the providers, that they're associated with, and those services. I think going along with your how much insurance, how much of an insurance activity they really are. Just direct 401k management is
Yeah.
something that, you know,
A million
Paycor,
participants.
yeah, they're not just not going to go there by nature anyway. In
Yeah,
the
yeah.
future,
So
so
what do you think this means for the broker network, the big broker network? Because obviously not quite the benefits powerhouse as at Paycor as at Paychex, but what do you think that means for the benefits brokerage over at Paycor, which is a rich network and key to their sales too, by the way?
yeah, and it does. It is something to think about, because Paycor in particular, while you're mentioning the strength and kind of where Paychex plays, some of that is because they're doing it themselves. Paycor has really done a great job cultivating some relationships in the broker community, and some of that leans on the idea that when it comes to some of those benefit services, the broker is going to take that piece of the pie, right? And whereas in the paycheck side of the space, they're quite happy to do a lot of that portion themselves. So
Yeah,
so does that mean, and again, nothing happens super rapidly in this space, but as Paychex brings its own capabilities in that space, you know, then what does that mean about their interaction, their go to the different broker relationships that they've already,
yeah.
established?
Well, there's got to be some overlap between the CPAs, banks, and brokers. They're all brokering
Yeah,
for the whole pay community, if you will, the PEO community.
yeah.
And one of the things, I picked this up from the TD Cohen Cowen research. Shout out to those guys. We're hoping to. By the way, just teasing a quick episode here, Julie. I'm hoping to bring on Brian Bergen
I know
and
that.
Jared Levin from TD Cowen, and we are going to talk the market. And I can't wait. Those guys are. I have a lot of private conversations with them, and I love their insights. So we're all going to compare notes here to the best of our ability. But one of the things they pointed out is just how rich that broker channel is to Paycor. It has a 3x close rate
That's
over
right.
other channels. That's impressive, and I think that that is going to be something that maybe now combined, it's much easier for the brokers to sell and help, and certainly reach a wider audience in this case. So
Well, and some of the secrets, some of the underpinnings of those broker relationships are really built on, the organization has something to offer. It's
yeah,
technology at minimum. Sometimes it's more than technology. But when it comes to the benefits bit, they need that services boost. And that's what the broker,
yeah,
adds in as sometimes it says a white label. You don't even know, that
yeah,
where you're going and how you're getting it. And so there's so many ways that those relationships are put together in ways that you can buy that or
yeah,
tap into that solution, that it opens up a bit of a hornet's nest. If you have something in your environment, do you have it because it's part of a white label broker solution, or do you
yeah,
have it because you've gotten it directly and then your broker is adding service? Like there's kind of a financial puzzle from a business case perspective to unravel there, and it's something that we do a lot.
yeah.
But it's not second nature to an HR leader who just wants a
Right.
solution.
Right, right. No, agreed, agreed. Yeah, reach out. Shout out to Brown and Brown. Reach out to get help. So let's talk about a couple of Paycor differentiators because these are some of the things that I always felt made sort of set them apart a little bit. So one of the things I think is very important to point out, obviously, it's pretty obvious the marketing spend they've been doing recently, right? In the last few years, the stadium, amazing, right? Huge for the NFL. There's been a few Monday night games I've watched. And I just, marveled at the fact that HR tech is on an NFL stadium. I think that's really fantastic.
Kinda cool.
Yeah, I love it. So that marketing push has been huge. I know they've showed some metrics on what that dividend or what they've seen as a sales increase as a result of that. I think I saw somewhere investments in marketing again. Shout out TD Cowen. Investments in marketing is evidenced by marketing leads growing by 31% CAGR. So it's working, right? Now, what is important about that, I think, is not just they're spending money and putting their name on NFL stadiums, but they're backing it up with 600 sales and marketing folks on the ground in the 50, I think it's the 50th biggest cities in the United States. So they are deeply embedded in regionally into the United States and obviously doing a good job that way. And I think that's a huge benefit to what Checks has out there, which is an army constantly, adding new clients. But I think the other thing I want to go back to your point in the very beginning about sectors. One of the things that I always appreciated about Paycor, and I can remember this as far back as 2017, 18, when I was first working with them from an HCM tech perspective, is they have a value chain, not just as go to market for sales, a value chain, the full go to market spectrum from going to the customer, on the sales end to servicing them for the life of the deal, implementation, deployment, all of that generally is aligned around sector specific knowledge. So they have leaned into sectors, they have invested in sectors, but more importantly, invested in the knowledge, engagement, and relationships along that path to be able to speak and stand side by side and guide these customers in those sectors with these key challenges. So I think that's a really nice, a very mature element of their operating model that I think is gonna come over, and I hope it will continue and obviously translate over at Paychex.
Yeah, and these are some sticky industries, right? If you think
Yeah,
about healthcare and hospitals or mental health, I mean, like, there's
yeah,
just unique characteristics of 24/7 services that drive unique needs in the
yep,
technology or modules in the technology, and so being able to represent and to showcase your strength to those sector or industry specific criteria, it is a huge, it's a huge
yeah.
win, whether you're looking at a competitive bid or keeping clients.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been in many RFP situations in my day, and there's nothing more that the C suites prefer than to have someone speaking their language, right, and putting it into the lens that they are dealing with and the challenges they're going through. And I think that shows in how well Paycor has been able to grow its solution, and obviously, end up the darling of Paychex Eye. And interestingly, right, is this I didn't see this coming, to be honest with you. I kind of felt like it was time for Paychex to pick up something. They hadn't made an acquisition in a little bit, I don't believe. So I thought that was
Big
coming.
one.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this is interesting. But I think it makes sense, right? Takes out a partner, adds a huge TAM, helps them move up market, and now they can cross sell a ton of stuff. So yeah, maybe we'll see more.
The other thing that I can't help, bringing up is just that growth mentality. So if you're one of these clients that's growing from
Yeah,
one, critical size range to another critical size range, when you start hitting, even upwards into the hundreds, there's a dynamic that happens where, you end up having to add some resources. So
mm,
maybe your one person HR team or fractional HR team becomes, you know, 2 to 4 people or 5 people, right? It becomes actually a
yeah,
team. At that point in time, oftentimes there is a genuine interest not only in the really robust technology that you've been talking about with Paycor, but also in some do it yourself.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you have a bigger team, you're less likely or less inclined, sometimes depending on your growth trajectory, to need to outsource it all because you just couldn't possibly handle it. And so, being able to lean a little bit into that tech centric model and
yeah.
strip down some of the services as you grow, that's a dynamic that we see, as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed. The other thing I would love to see too from this is I'm hoping, look, there's a little bit of a tone of a multi-country pull for Paycor, right? I don't know that they're strategically ambitious about becoming global. I think they're just being sort of pulled, just like many of the down market players are. iSolved, right? We saw them get together with a cohort to start solving for that. They've got others that are being inched that way. But remember, Paychex owns the lesser group. They bought that back in what 2018ish, I think it was. It's in Denmark exclusively. It stayed separate. It's still separate. I've always wondered, when are they going to push a little bit further beyond borders? I don't know that they will. I'm not saying that they are. I just wonder if this might be the pull, right? Maybe the Paycor element of this pulls them a little bit further, and maybe the lesser group gets activated in their ecosystem beyond just being a subsidiary and owned. So it's going to be neat to see what happens here, right?
Yeah, and that's actually a great point because, since COVID and beyond with work from home, I mean, we do see companies of all sizes finding
Yeah,
themselves with presences outside of their borders. So you mentioned earlier in our conversation here about, the potential pull into Mexico
Canada.
and Canada. And then, several of these down market players have specifically aligned themselves with a partner
Yep.
that is their go-to for anybody outside of the US.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know that Paycor necessarily has a specific partner in that. I think it's been a little bit more organic. You would tell
Safeguard.
me.
They've got Safeguard and I think three others. I think most of I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. I know Safeguard is one of them. So I think they've solved it kind of with a cohort of
Yeah.
kind of marketplace style approach. Giving customers choice, which totally makes sense, and absolutely integrating, best in class somewhere.
When you think about these sorts of things, and does this set the tone for M&A in the year, right?
Yes, yes,
Sometimes those handshake partners are getting swallowed up.
yeah,
Think of Immedis, Active Payroll Immedis. Those were kind of common go-tos that a number of folks might use because their breadth and their specialization in that area. and you take one of those players off the table, like ADP
Yeah.
took Celergo off, or UKG took Metis off, you know, then that just reduces the go-to pot, right? And so
Yeah.
it's part of the dynamics that I know you and I both follow and love to talk about.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before on the show last year. I expect, look, the election's over now. There's some clarity. It looks like the economy's getting healthier, and a lot of optimism. And I think you're going to see a bit more consolidation to power up, right, to go to market. And I think you're also going to see some IPOs.
Yeah.
So this space is, it's what, January? It was the first
January
working
8th.
day of the year, and we are already off to a $4 billion, pay takeout, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
what could be. I think that there's 300 and whatever days left that we'll say. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more HR and payroll 2.0 market quick takes. Is all I know.
That's right. Excited to do them.
Yeah,
All
awesome.
right. Well, have we boiled down in a nutshell at least some of the top highlights so we can get them out there?
For now, we've distilled what we have. Stay tuned. I'm certain that the analyst community will get more from the both sides. Congratulations to Paycor
Yeah.
and Paychex.
Congrats.
This is a beautiful ad. We'll be keeping an eye and keeping you posted on what's going on.
For sure.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care, everyone.